Awesome. Do you have time for questions?
Yeah, I have some time.
Okay, perfect. I think there's a new feature with Zoom. It's been a while, but I think you can just raise your hand and it should probably detect that with AI. I'm not sure if it works for this, but might. So try it out. Otherwise, you can just react and we'll figure it out. So I guess like the first question is more just kind of like about you and like your work with open source. I know you have a blog and you maintain it pretty well. I just wanted to kind of ask again, like with regards to like Node and working with Node open source, like how did you decide that's what you wanted to do? And like how did you like what was that path like joining the community?
Yeah, so this will actually go back like a decade. Um, so I had started, I'd been using JavaScript for a long time, back when it was still okay to write web pages with table layouts and things like that. And then Node came out, and I found out about it, and I got really interested in it. And then I ended up getting I was working at I'm from Pittsburgh, and I was working at smaller companies in like the Pittsburgh area. And then I got hired remotely at Walmart Labs. And at the time, Walmart had a number of prominent Node people kind of working there, less so now. But one of them was Aaron Hammer, he was like the spec author of OAuth, and he was like the creator of the Happy JS framework, which you may, or depending on how long you've been around, you may or may not remember it. But Happy JS kind of got a lot of fame back in like 2013 because Node was still so new, and they used it at Walmart for Black Friday, handling Black Friday traffic. Um, and so yeah, I saw all this and I was like, that's really cool. And then I saw that they were hiring remote, so I applied and ended up getting the job. And I honestly just kind of felt like, wow, I'm working with like these big shot Node people. Like, what can I do to kind of like prove that I belong here? Um, and I had written a book on Node, and I had like gone through the source code a little bit and saw some things that looked like they could be bugs. So I was like, well, I'll start sending bug fixes to Node, and that's just kind of snowballed into like becoming a collaborator, and then I was part of the IOJS fork, if you remember what that was, and then joining the technical steering committee and all of that. So long story short is it was just kind of a way for me to like prove that I belonged at Walmart.
That's it. That's pretty funny actually. No, the last part what you just said. I think you're more than proved that you work really well and Walmart was lucky to have you. So I actually am just more interested, like I guess in some specific details of your story there. So what would you say the version of Node was when you started contributing?
I started working like contributing back when it was still 0.10.
Wow. Okay.
I think
That's
I started I think I started using it on like 0.4 or 0.6.
okay. Okay. And then you also, I remember this, and I was checking back some of the videos that we did. You've also been contributing to Dino, right? Are you still contributing there?
No, so I worked at Dino back in 2022. I think I actually work at Joyent now, which is a Samsung subsidiary. Um, but yeah, I worked there for I think a little less than a year.
What specifically, does it take to just start contributing? Like, I feel like this is a question that comes up a lot. Like, how do you reach out to like an open source community and like, is the best way to just like fork the repo and say, hey, I've got, a PR or what is it like? Like,
So particularly these days, it's a lot easier, I would say. Node is very like welcoming to newcomers. Um, you can go on there and search the issue tracker they'll be labeled with like good first issue or something like that. And a lot of projects have similar, like it might say like good for beginners or just look through the labels and see it'll usually jump out by name. But if you see something that says like good first contribution, um, it usually means it's a fairly small scoped bug. Open a pull request, and then you'll definitely get feedback. There's people watching the Node repo 24 hours a day because they're all around the world.
do you think that it's better to have, like a native test runner? I feel like that's kind of what this is versus downloading something via NPM. Because it seems like at the time, like when Node was first coming out, like people were just making all kinds of NPM solutions like Jest and like you said, Mocha, and there are all kinds of different things. Um, why is like Node test runner like appearing now? I guess those are a lot of different questions, but feel free to jump
That's
in there.
actually a good question.
Yeah,
They're a pretty loaded question. Um, so back in the day, yeah, everything, there were whole people who like their whole kind of premise in Node was creating all these tiny modules. And that works really well if you control all the tiny modules and you're just building things up from your own kind of Legos. Um, Node Core used to be completely the same way. It was we would defer everything to the ecosystem. Like, that belongs in user land was a very common response to feature requests. And so like the Node ecosystem built itself up, but then I feel like we also reached a point where like then things like left pads started happening. And so like, NPM put things in place to where you can no longer just unpublish a package because people might be depending on it and things like that. Um, but then in more recent years, there's been Dino and there's been Bun, and they have kind of come with a much more batteries included approach. Um, and it turns out that there are people who still love the tiny module approach, but I think if I had to make a broad generalization, most people want the batteries included. Like the people who are at their day job, a lot of people just want to show up, work for 8 hours, go home. They don't feel like tracking down which is the best module on npm and all that. And then as more and more things have been added into core, I know some companies have also kind of passed down these um, not necessarily rules, but like prefer these built-in modules where you can, not necessarily because they're better, because like I said, we're never going to have as many features as the things in the ecosystem, but security is a big deal. And like, like that screenshot I showed where it was like the Zalgo text, that was from an AWS application. AWS is pretty big. Um, and I was working on a different application when I worked there, and we were affected too. So like, the scope of these things is huge, and there's actual money on the lines. So that to me, that's kind of how we've progressed over time.
absolutely. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I think companies probably would prefer like a batteries included approach because, yeah, as you said, there's a lot of money on the line, and security is like something that, companies are always paying more and more money these days just to manage a lot of their applications. Do you have like an opinion on like testing itself? Because there are a lot of different testing frameworks. This style kind of feels a little imperative. Whereas like if you compare it to something like React testing library or testing library in general, that's more like a behavioral testing. Do you think that this is more like meant for server-side testing with Node, and there would be like no behavioral kind of aspect to it or UI focused aspect to it? Or do you feel like it is more, I guess, like meant for imperative use, like just kind of unit testing?
So you can definitely do more than just unit testing with it. Um, like I mentioned, there's not like built-in browser stuff, but anything that you can run in Node.js, you can run in there. So like you can use something like JS DOM, like I said, any of those front end things that you can run inside of Node itself. You're just not going to get a pop-up window where you can like say click on a button and things like that. Um, I would say, for my goals, because I don't really do much front end development. I was aiming for, make it work for Node. Um, but I know that people doing front end stuff have picked it up and have used it. Um, and I'm not really here to bash any other frameworks. I will say if something like VTest works better for you because you're front end focused, then by all means, I'd rather you use that than, you know, complain about how this just isn't doing it for you. So that's kind of my opinion on it.
Okay, yeah. No, I mean, like, I feel like there's a majority of users who use Node.js primarily for like UI focused roles, especially front end. So, because Node, I think definitely like you can use it to like make, I guess like the most popular application of it is probably Next.js using Node under the hood. From that, there's also all these different like integration libraries that have kind of come along the way. Same with React. React is also, transforming and doing all kinds of things with Node first. And then all these packages are, put together to kind of create like the ecosystem, as you said. Can we plug and play some of these other things, or would that be kind of like an awful experience.
What do you mean by plug and play these other things?
So like let's say you want to use like the testing library with Node testing suite. Is that a good would they work together or you just kind of like suggest like not using them together?
Is testing library like an assertion library? I know that's a React thing.
It's more like UI focused, so it's like checking stuff on the front end again. And like I think you said, like it's this tool is not meant to be front end focused, so maybe I just want to verify that with you.
I will say I don't know enough about how like testing library works. I know people have done React testing with it. I know one of the projects I showed on that slide with all the logos. I saw Playwright was using Node for some Node test for some of their testing, even though they are a front end testing framework. So you can do these things. It's just a matter of like what's the most convenient and what do you like most? Because I know some people, like I've seen some people say the deal breaker is the assertion library, and I keep telling people you don't have to use it, but it just kind of goes in one ear and out the other.
Does Node, like as a steering committee, like, have like these kind of roadmaps where they want to like integrate like more of the packages that are, like in my opinion, I feel like a lot of it's like just a lot of different engineers kind of making their own open source projects and committing that to NPM. But does Node like itself want to like create like more of a batteries included approach? Is that kind of like the direction now with 24, 23, and 24 and so on?
Yeah, so there are definitely some people who are clinging to the old small core philosophy, even though I'll just say that that philosophy has lost. Um, it's what I feel like the majority of people want. Um, Sorry, what was the question again? I got sidetracked with that thought.
Oh, so that is the main question is like, is the
Oh, the
steering,
roadmap.
yeah, yeah, the roadmap, yeah.
So there's not a defined roadmap because everything is based on volunteer work, but there is it's called the Next 10 kind of working group, and it's their focus is kind of like reaching out to users and things like that, seeing running surveys and things like that, seeing what users want out of Node in the next 10 years. That's kind of where the name came from. So there are people doing outreach. Um, and so I would say there's kind of a loose general roadmap. Like, yes, we want to have more focus on WebAssembly, for example. Like that's something that's, up and I don't know if it's still up and coming. It may have already arrived, but that type of thing. Like there's a broad scope, but not like, okay, we're going to add this specific feature because that's more of like, we would like to have it, open an issue for it. And if we can get a volunteer to do it, then it gets done.
Excellent. I mean, that's a question that also comes up a lot in this group, and just from people I talk to is, and this is going back to our coffee chat, like when I first was talking to you again, like a little bit earlier, like I think around September or so. Um, People are looking for work, right? And people are trying to ask like, how to become a better software engineer and, how to just kind of have like a stronger resume. So um, I feel like the stuff that you're kind of talking about too, and just like the direction, like integrating, um, like jumping into like open source with, the small little label, and making a pull request. I think that's kind of good, like little resume builders. But then like, being able to help Node.js, kind of steer to the direction that wants. I feel like that's also helpful. So I feel like, and I guess like, would you say that that too is like the preferred path like for engineers today? Like if they're trying to like get a foot up in the industry or like, build a stronger resume, just like contribute to open source.
I say without a doubt that will make your resume stronger. For a few reasons. One is you'll get experience working with people around the world. Like I feel lucky to have been able to like collaborate with some of the people that I've been able to collaborate with. Um, but like then you also have things that you can point to. So like people talk about having like a portfolio site. You can also point to open source contributions. I've it can lead to jobs. So I've had whole jobs where my entire job was just to work on like open source stuff like Node Core and libuv and things like that. Um, so yeah, I absolutely think that that's one of the best, if not the best things you can do to especially to establish yourself. Once, if you're famous, it might not do that much more for you. It still might just be something you enjoy doing. But if you're, like I said, that was kind of my whole Walmart story was I'm just this guy from Pittsburgh no one's ever heard of. Like, how can I try to like get my foot in the door?
Does somebody have a question?
Adam has a question.
Sure. Okay, Adam, go ahead.
Hey, sorry about that. Yeah, I thought again, kind of to speak on what Vijay said and kind of ask. I've had experience with Node, but I've been kind of out of it. Thank you so much for this talk. It's been really informative. My question is because I have a feeling there'll probably be a lot of people kind of asking the same question. As somebody who's kind of been out of Node and kind of interested in it again, is there any recommendations you'd have for maybe a project that could use the test runner so you can kind of basically, I know it says that very batteries included, it's a very broad thing, but I guess would you have any recommendations for like a project to kind of run to fully understand the tool?
I mean, if you're looking for kind of just a generic project, there's always like the to-do list. You write a to-do list app, and then you like make tests for that. Um, if you have an existing code base, especially if it's just like a side project, um, I when I was gathering all those logos, I went and did like a GitHub code search, like cs.github.com, and put in node tests, and I was able to find all these repos. And I found these big ones, but I also found a ton of small ones where it was people just saying, like porting from Mocha to node test or porting from Jest to node test because getting a chance to just kind of play around with it and see what it's all about. B, like, if it's a side project that you may not want to invest a lot of time in, that's one less dependency you have to worry about keeping up with. Um, but yeah, I think those are two good kind of like starting points. It's like a generic, like artificial app, and then anything that you may have laying around that has tests already.
Yeah, that makes sense. And thank you for the recommendation. Now that I know I can search on GitHub and kind of see how it's being used. That's also would be really helpful to see. So thank you.
Yeah. Oh, no problem. The Node.js website, I don't know the exact URL off, nodejs.org. I don't remember the exact link from there, but they have guides on there. And I think at least two, maybe three of the guides are specifically on the test runner. Um, so it's kind of like how to use the test runner, and then I think there was one related to code coverage. So yeah, I would suggest checking those out as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
All right, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off before
No,
when you were wrapping up, but I didn't want to skip over the, the last question.
it's all good. It's all good. Like, I mean, and that's kind of one other thing I guess I can just kind of say is that moving forward, HackBuddy is gonna like take more on a podcasting kind of feel. So it is going to be more kind of like live and also, you can interrupt and we can kind of joke and banter around a little bit. I feel like that would be beneficial for the community. But I feel like this whole format is great. And again, like you gave a very good detailed presentation tonight. And I wanted to thank you again for your time. And then I just want to also say that you're always welcome to, come hang out with the group and check out some of the meetups we have, as well as present again.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks so much for having me. Another project I've been working on in Node Core is SQLite integration. So maybe one day talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. We look forward to seeing you come by again, anytime. So, like we'll schedule something with you again, and we appreciate, obviously the eagerness to present. So, um, yeah, and I also want to just thank some of the people who came tonight, and please spread the word that HackBuddy is back, and we will continue doing meetups and presentations and all kinds of fun stuff. So, yeah, thank you, everyone. Have a great
Uh,
night.